here's my review of Wednesday Season 2. And wow, it has been so long since Season 1. And first of all, Netflix has got to stop doing this. Like, these huge waits in between seasons. And then they only do half of the seasons. Like, I just waited to binge this whole show. Because I'm not going to wait, like, a whole other month. I just binged it in, like, 2 or 3 days. I waited until it was all out. And anyways, that's just a little rant right there. But overall, this season was good. But it wasn't nearly as good as Season 1. And I've seen some people online saying, oh, this is a disaster. This Netflix ruined one of their best shows. And it's like, Season 1 is a lot of fun. But it's not some masterpiece of a show. Like, it's just a pretty fun, cute, like, teen drama with the Addams family. With mainly, obviously, just Wednesday. It's not some masterpiece of storytelling. In Season 2, you get a lot more of that. And it's fun, but it's not, like, amazing. But Season 1 wasn't. It was just a lot of fun, and you get a lot of fun here. And the main thing that's been going on in this season is Wednesday having a lot of visions of the future. And it's basically just like Season 1, this big mystery. And specifically, she has a vision of Enid's death. And she has to figure out how to prevent it. And it's interesting here. Like, Wednesday as a character, and all of these characters in the show are very fun. But, like, I think that the plot, for the most part, is kind of surface level. And, like, the writing as well. It's just, like, it's fun. And it's carried and completely elevated by these awesome characters. And speaking of that, we get to see a lot more of Uncle Fester. He's really fun as well. And Fred Armisen, I believe is the name of the actor. He's doing such a great job. He is a blast as Uncle Fester. And just seeing more of all these characters is just what makes this show as fun as it is. Because the plot and story here are not the most compelling. And I sometimes wonder, like, I heard some things like Jenna Ortega was saying, oh, I had more creative control. There's a lot more horror this season. And there is. But it sometimes wonder, like, if this show could go for, like, an R rating, like, they could truly push the boundaries of the horror with the Addams family. And that could be really fun, but that's never going to happen. To be fair, you do get some. Like, there's a whole subplot with Pugsley having a pet zombie and him slowly getting smarter and smarter, and then he eventually eats the professor, who's just a severed head in a jar. And that's a lot of, like, classic, goofy Addams family horror. Just, like, a little bit more blood. That just makes the show as fun as it is. And, like, when I think of a show like this, it's like the overarching plot I didn't find to be super compelling. But then when you have a very fun body swap episode. And Wednesday and Enid swap bodies. And just seeing Jenna, who we normally see is just so, like, dead on the inside, acting so fun. And then she's literally allergic to color when she swapped clothes with Enid. It's just, like, such a classic Addams family joke, and seeing it actually played out, it just works so well. It's great. And you could just tell that all the actors and actresses, they're having such a fun time. Like, specifically Jenna Ortega, of her just having to not be so, like, in a way, one-dimensional as a character. And she's allowed to have a lot more fun when she swaps bodies with Enid. And that was just fun to watch. This is just a fun show. But I just wish that the overarching story was just as intriguing. And I'm going to give credit where credit is due. There's a lot more interesting visuals. Like, we see some classic Tim Burton stop motion. Like you look at this and it's like, yeah, this is Tim Burton. And obviously he's a producer. I don't know if he directed any of the episode, but, like, he obviously is, like, heavily involved with the show. And it shows. And, like, these scenes like this, chef's kiss. I really like these scenes. And, like, I sometimes think, though, also, like, how when we come to, like, the Hyde in Tyler's character, how Netflix, like, this show is, like, Netflix's most popular show. Like, I think the CGI could have been better. They could have put more money in the show. This is their most watched show. At least Season 1 was. And it's, like, it doesn't look bad, but it's, like, it could have looked way better. Because for the most part, there's not a lot of CGI in this show. So it's, like, you'd think that when there is, it could look a little better. And also, having Pugsley in this season a lot more and his interactions with Eugene and him having like this pet zombie, which plays into the overall plot, is just a lot of fun. Like, this is just like classic Addams Family shenanigans, and it just works. And that's why I think that this show works, that even though the plot is not as compelling, it's just these little scenarios and these fun characters that they get into. It allows it to just feel like classic Addams Family, but also being its own thing. And that's why I think that this show works. Also, Steve Buscemi is in this season, and he's great as like the principal of Nevermore. Steve Buscemi's always a treat, and he's great in here. And there is this whole like little subplot with him and him trying to get like funding from Mrs. Addams, from Morticia. And like we see more of Morticia and Gomez in this season, which is great. Like, I like seeing more of the Addams family. And yeah, it's really just the characters that carry the show so much. And another episode that I really liked was just like this little bottle episode of just this like big camp triathlon where these two schools book the same camp when they're doing like this camp out, and they have to do some triathlon. Just like whoever wins gets to stay there for the night or for the week or however long they were. That was just a really fun episode. It's like classic like high school shenanigans, like classic high school drama, kind of stuff like that, like competition, but with like the twist of Wednesday, and it just works. And that's where the show works. There's just the characters and the little scenarios that they get into are just fun, but just the overall arching plot is just never really the best, in my opinion at least, but it works just because I love these characters so much. And one thing I appreciate this show for doing is like just the amount of new stuff it brings. Like, a big part of this season is like what's going on with Isaac, and who we're trying to find out is like, is this character who died a long time ago but is somehow connected to the Addams family. And then you find out that Thing, that's actually Isaac's hand. And it's really fascinating. There's this whole like flashback and this whole history with Morticia and Gomez and what's happening with them and what happened to Isaac, how they killed him, but he was bad. And there's this whole like, but that's the thing, is like, that was interesting, but I feel like it had an interesting hook, but it wasn't as interesting enough to carry this whole season. That's why I think the individual episodes where it's just like the little shenanigans, like the triathlon episode or the body swap episode, were my favorites, because it's like it allowed these characters to shine. Because although this plot was really interesting, I feel like they didn't focus on it well enough, because it could have been really interesting, but I don't know, it just kind of fell flat. And also, Wednesday communicating with her grandmother, who she sees as a ghost, is a lot of fun. That's great. And like I said, just more of Uncle Fester is always great. And it's just the characters. So from the fun characters to, of course, Jenna Ortega's great performance. And with a very interesting ending of Enid turning into a werewolf to save Wednesday. And she says, if I turn into a werewolf, I'll be stuck like this forever. And then, well, she does. What's going to happen? I don't actually think they're going to do that. They're just going to come up with some way. It's like, oh, no, she can turn back through this, because that's just not going to happen. Like, they're going to bring back Emma Myers, and they're going to have those fun interactions, because it would be way too expensive. Like, let's just be honest. Like, they're not going to do that. And then this show ending with Wednesday and Uncle Fester going off to go look for Enid. And that's fascinating. Like, I think that could set up for a very interesting season 3 where we're not at Nevermore Academy. And it's just kind of more of these characters, like classic Wednesday, classic Addams Family characters' interactions on a mystery, a manhunt, really, trying to search down for Enid. That could be really interesting. So yeah, in conclusion, I think that this was a good season of television. This was good, but it was just a pretty big step down from season 2, or from season 1. But I've seen some people say, oh, it's terrible, they ruined it. They really didn't. It was still solid. It's just some of the decisions, I think, just did not work as well as they wanted to. Some of the side characters were not as interesting. And it just wasn't as good as season 1. But that being said, like, the characters are still a lot of fun. There are a couple good bottle episodes in there that are just really fun times. And overall, it's a solid season of television, but it's just a step down from season 1.